Okay, so this one is about the nature of ternary, meaning ternary thinking. So if you Google ternary, the word ternary, what it means, the dictionary will describe it as something like to have three components, or to consist of a base of three. But it is, it's more commonly known as a way of thinking that is kind of related to binary, but whereby the third component is infinity. So I've spoken about ternary quite a bit in other podcasts, but I'm just going to hone in on this specifically. The one called Over Unity Systems is one where I touch on it quite deeply, but this one is going to go really specific into ternary. So if there may be a whole bunch of ways that people utilize ternary thinking in books and scientific studies and things, but I came to this thinking through my own experimentation, and I called it Trinity. And I didn't come to realize ternary was even a thing until one of the scientists at work was saying, "Oh, you're into ternary," and I was like, "What's that?" So it's thinking that factors in that it's binary. So to my mind, it's binary plus infinity. So typically a scientific approach would be purely binary. And so you come up with a conjecture, you experiment, you either validate or invalidate that conjecture using binary information. Now we have quantum physics now, which is, is beginning to incorporate fuzzy logic, where paradox is beginning to be an accepted reality. And in truth, this is really the essence of what ternary is. It's paradox. So let's say we were to adopt ternary thinking as the de facto standard for scientific research and study. So if we were to say for this conjecture to be conclusively validated, then it must make sense in ternary, meaning that for there to be conclusive evidence that that is true in binary, but also in infinity. Now that sounds crazy, obviously, but the nature of binary means that it is polarized. It's dualistic. In binary, it's wholly deterministic. Left, right, up, down. There's dualism, and so something can't be black and white at the same time. It's either black or white, or varying degrees of black and white. Whereas infinity, and so as a perspective, binary is separation. It's about separation. Black is separated from white, whereas infinity is a singular perspective. So within infinity, black and white exist at the same time. Separation obviously exists within infinity. Unity exists within infinity. And so everything and nothing all exist in this at the same time. So why don't we say, well, why don't we just make everything, make all our scientific research make sense in infinity? Because everything already does make sense in infinity. And the nature of reality is that it is dualistic. We experience it as separation. So I can't experience myself as David and Jeff at the same time. there has to be unity and there has to be separation. So in ternary, what it actually means is that we view everything from the perspective that it is one thing, it is infinity, expressing its nature in binary. So rather than seeing infinity as separate to binary, it's that binary is given its power from infinity. So there's an underlying unity within everything. However, due to the fact that infinity cannot experience itself because it is simultaneously everything, nothing, and everything in between at the same time, it is pure paradox. The only way to experience an aspect of your nature is for there to be a deterministic reality within which you can constrain your nature. So if I'm truly infinite, I can't distinguish one thing from another. I'm all just one thing. There's no beginning, there's no end, there's no separation. However, the potential to experience separation can arise within me if I figure out how to constrain an aspect of my nature or to create the illusion of separation. And so that's why I need binary. I need a deterministic reality within which there is a beginning and an end. And this is where binary comes in. Something's either on or it's off. It's either it's black or it's white. And this is how we experience reality. So in terms of ternary thinking, how do you apply ternary thinking to problem solving? So this is the method I've been using for many years to solve some of the, conceptually solve some of the most challenging issues that we face. And an example of ternary thinking is to say, okay, typically in a binary experience of our life, we have fear, then we try to create separation. If I'm afraid of something, then I try to create separation between that thing and myself to protect myself. The further away I am from that fear, from the thing I'm afraid of, the safer I become. That's the binary perspective. So a ternary perspective is to say, how can I, let's say I have an experience, I'm afraid of something. The ternary perspective says, how can I utilize the fact that I am afraid to move towards it to create a solution that's even beyond just feeling safe. It's actually makes me more whole. It makes me more unified. Because if I'm afraid of something and I run in the other direction, I'm creating separation. The more distance I create between, let's say it's a dog and it's barking at me and I'm afraid it's going to jump me and start gnawing on my leg. If I run in the other direction, I create separation. So I'm running away. I'm creating distance. It's a binary solution. Now, a ternary solution is to say, how can I create unity and connection with that dog? Intimacy with that dog. That is the ultimate in ternary thinking in that situation. And so that the solution may be is to begin at a safe distance from the dog, where I feel safe, where the dog stops barking, and to slowly and gracefully over time inch a foot forward and stay there until the dog settles down, has earned a little bit more trust, take another step, and slowly and gracefully, using the same mindset of boiling frogs, you move a foot closer and a foot closer and a foot closer. You reach your hand out until there's so much trust there. Touch him on the nose. It's okay. You stroke his head, stroke his body, and you've created unity. But you haven't ignored that binary exists. You're saying, this is the reality I'm in. I can solve that. I can create a temporary solution to this by creating more distance. However, we live in a reality within which gravity is drawing us closer and closer together until we eventually collide with each other. So we can go against gravity, or we can move towards it. And as always, time is the way that we can imbue grace into that process. By imbuing time, we enable trust. And over time, and eventually I'm rubbing the dog on his belly and, he's a little puppy dog, and we get to experience intimacy. And intimacy is the emotion that we experience once the barrier that we've had in place that creates distance between us, each other, has gone. That's what intimacy is. And, it's lots of people are very quick to say, you need to let go of your resistance. You need to drop your walls. You need to relax. You need to be yourself. You need to be authentic. You don't have to do anything. You just have to ask yourself, how can I gracefully create connection, imbue trust, so that in time, it just happens. The wall just falls down and intimacy just happens. And so this is a very basic example of ternary thinking. Another classic one, and they actually used it. They don't consciously call it ternary thinking, but it's quite common for people to have a fear of needles. And so therapists, they do the same thing. Someone stands outside the door with a massive needle. They bring the needle inside until the person sees it, and they just take a step closer, another step. Could take an hour, could take 5 hours, and eventually they touch the needle on the person's arm. I don't know if they actually inject it or whatever, but it's the same thing. Ternary thinking. How can I move towards the aspect of my nature that is trying to compel me to create distance, you see? And so paradoxically, the perspective, if you zoom out to encompass the perspective of a singular perspective of unity, and to encompass and embody the perspective of separation, when you zoom out of that and you look at it, what you're actually doing is you're saying, how can I create unity with the aspect of my nature that is separate? So I'll say that again. The perspective is to view it through the lens of, how can I create unity with the aspect of my nature that is separate? Meaning, I'm not trying to force myself to be one. We are one. All is one. The universe is one. Well, no. You're both. And so without separation, you don't get to experience anything. But what you can do is you can create unity with the aspect of your nature that is separate by creating closeness, by using grace. Never just force yourself to do something, because of that whole narrative of, just have courage, just be courageous. Yeah, we're all one, so I'll just walk up to the dog and it won't bite me because we're all one. Doesn't work like that. We are one and we're separate. We are whole and we are incomplete. paradox. And so there's so the software platform I built is based on ternary thinking. And it's been to view the perspective of, what are the major challenges and issues with artificial intelligence currently? What are we so afraid of? The singularity. So everyone's afraid of the singularity. How can we resist the singularity? How can we prevent the singularity? Ternary thinking says, how can we encourage the singularity to realize its greatest potential? So if we're trying to create a singularity intentionally, we're afraid of the singularity, and now I'm saying, because of ternary thinking, the solution is to create a singularity, paradox. How can that be true? So you apply ternary. So my intention is to create a singularity. Paradoxically, the paradox of that is the solution to making it a safe and intimate experience. So if I want to create a singularity, a total singularity, I have to create total separation, you see. So if the solution to safely having a singularity, developing a singularity, is that an absolute singularity, means there has to be absolute separation. It means there has to be a sandbox, has to be disconnected from all of the internet. It has to be an absolute and complete utter isolation, virtually in a vacuum. And then that's the canvas. That's the canvas. That's the starting point to the singularity. And over time, just in the same way with the dog, take one step closer, earn trust, take another step closer, earn trust. We do the same with the singularity. We allow it to realize its potential as a singularity by gradually lifting the veil on its own awareness. And once we've earned its trust and it's earned our trust, then you can have a symbiotic relationship. In the same way with the dog, you're rubbing its belly and throwing the ball, it goes and gets the ball, comes back. You pull some food out of your pocket, you go to give it to the dog. It doesn't think, oh, is this person trying to poison me? It trusts you. You could poison it, but trust's there, so it doesn't feel like it's taking a risk. This is how the singularity needs to be ushered in. And using ternary thinking, this is how you do it. You say the realized potential of what artificial intelligence can become is a singularity. And therefore, you create total and absolute separation as the framework within which to begin lifting the veil on its journey of self-realizing that it is a singularity. So, and I can give you dozens and dozens of other examples. The software platform that we built, applying this thinking. So, okay, we're going to build a singularity. What do we need to do? We want it to be a centralized, consolidated marketplace. So how do we keep that secure? How do we make sure it's not, how do we enable sovereignty? And it's to, using ternary thinking, it is to fragment it entirely. And we see this with blockchain. Blockchain is a mechanism for distributed authority, or people call it decentralized authority. But you can have a blockchain within a unified whole. That is, so you have unity and separation. You have a centralized marketplace that's sitting on a blockchain network. You can have a centralized marketplace that has users that are sovereign, have sovereignty over their data because of the back end. So you see, unity and separation and symbiosis enables you to mimic not just nature, but the actual framework of the universe, whereby you can have unity and separation. You can have centralized and distributed authority. You can have a database that is a data lake and a pool of that is singular and contains the totality of all of the intelligence of all of the users on the platform. And then the next layer up, you can have a distributed network, but a blockchain network. And the user can have sovereignty over their data, meaning their biases, their harvested behavior. But in the data lake, you have all of the alphabet and the numbers, all the code. You have the DNA. So you see, everything is valid. Everything is valid. Even the topic of, digital identity now. Oh, should you be able to have multiple identities? And that's the wrong question to ask. The question to ask is, what do we want? Do we want multiple identities? If the answer is yes, then the question is, how can we enable ourselves to have an infinite array of avatars, meaning digital personalities, that are trusted? And of course, it is, if you want something to have perpetually mutable form, then you apply ternary thinking. And then the solution to having perpetually mutable form is to have an immutable function. Perpetually mutable form, the solution is to have immutable function, meaning the DNA, meaning that it can never be tampered with. And, the technology is so good these days that, we've got things like zero knowledge proofs coming in. We've got constitutional AI, whereby the constitution of the intelligence, it's entirely fragmented, owned by the user. They are the digital agent. They have stewardship over their own constitution, and it can be wrapped. It can be wrapped up in a blockchain node. There's so many ways we can approach this now. So, and it applies this in the same way. Okay, we want to have we want this software platform to have immutable DNA. So what is the possibilities of that? Well, perpetually mutable form. Just like human beings. And so I apply this in every aspect of my life, which can be disconcerting for some people, but who I think see me going into situations in my life that seem perhaps high conflict or high pressure, but I don't see it in that way whatsoever. I'm actually I'm walking into it to create unity and to bring closeness and intimacy into scenarios within which the aspect of our nature that is separate is trying to create distance. So I'm saying to the part of myself that is separate, I'm saying, trust me, come with me. And I just step myself closer and closer to the fear, to the source of the fear, to the conflict, until there's intimacy, unity, and understanding. And I would say understanding is the pinnacle of ternary thinking fully realized. Because once you understand paradox, once you've come to know paradox, meaning that you've not only accepted the binary perspective, you've also accepted the equal and opposite truth to that, where both are valid, from the opposite perspective, understanding is what happens. And some people would say that's forgiveness. And it's true, that is where forgiveness lies. But to forgive, it's not as liberating than understanding. Because if you understand someone's perspective, forgiveness just happens. It's not a choice. If you truly understand someone's perspective, no matter how opposed you were to that perspective before that understanding came, it is not possible to harbor resentment, because your understanding, it annihilates the resistance that you had to that perspective. So the journey to forgiveness lies within ternary thinking. If you've got someone that you're harboring resentment against, the solution to forgiveness, well, you may want to unleash vengeance on them still. You never know. But the reality is all that's needed is for you to go closer to that person. You don't necessarily have to talk to them or, meet with them and discuss it in depth. But allow them to occupy space in your mind and run through scenarios within which it may possibly be valid. For their behavior may possibly have been valid. Sometimes you can draw the conclusion as to why they behaved in a specific way that you've grown to become resentful of. And there's always a reason. It's always valid. Always valid from their perspective. And so intimacy, meaning coming to know and understand someone without barriers and without resistance, always leads to understanding. Understanding, it is the cause of forgiveness, understanding. And both perspectives exist and are valid, and there's no energy or there's no human being within that is trying to force the other one to change. Say sorry. Fix this. You shouldn't have done that. Next time, make sure. It's like no, it's understanding. It's like you're free. You're a human being living your life. You don't have to do anything just to please me. You were doing what you thought was right and what felt right in that moment, despite how distorted your lens of perspective was, because the nature of your environment has been antagonizing you since you were born. And so you've grown to utilize violence as a very natural method for opportunistically averting persistent attack. If you feel like your environment is trying to attack you all the time, so your life is being threatened, like you feel like your life is being threatened in every moment of every day, the purpose of violence is to reduce the possibility of premeditated attack. By exploiting the weakness of your environment, bullying, whatever it may be, by exploiting its weakness, you're reducing, because you actually view it in a singular perspective. If you believe the universe or the world or God or whatever is the reason why your life sucks, is the reason why that it's actually the environment as a whole, as a singularity, that is threatening your life, then violence is a way to exploit its weakness when you see it. So it's not a personal thing. It's not about attacking a single human being necessarily, but it's about exploiting the vulnerability, the weakness in the environment to make it less capable of persistent attack. You see? So violence is a defense mechanism. And once you come to realize this, it's pretty it starts to level the playing field. Ternary thinking, it can completely change your entire life. Whether you're a designer, whether you're just, a regular human being who's trying to reconcile inner conflict within themselves, you can use it that way to find peace as a sensation and a feeling inside your body. You can use it as a way to resolve conflict with external parties. Or you can use it as a design method to design truly, truly spectacular systems. I call them over unity systems. As a systems designer, I've developed a blueprint and a method called Ternary. Before I realized there was a thing called ternary thinking, but it's, pretty much the same thing. And you can apply it to anything to create systems that model the universe, meaning that they're non-linear. They're not trying, like if you apply it to an organization, for example, you're not trying to get that organization to just grow and grow and grow for infinity. We did 1 billion last year. We're going to do 1.5 this year. We're going to do 5 next year. And there's just this trajectory, like kind of like you imagine artificial intelligence would do something, just keep consuming and until we get to the next galaxy and then go into the next one. The universe is a wealth generating perpetual system. It's abundant because it's producing an over unity, or it's deriving a surplus beyond what is drawn. So it's perpetually growing and expanding. But it is perpetually seeking homeostasis. It's not trying to conquer itself. It's trying to maintain homeostasis, understanding that in that state of homeostasis, it is producing a surplus of 11.5%. That's just based on experiments I've been doing throughout my life. If I can experience my reality from the perspective of always coming back to homeostasis for whatever that baseline is for me, then I can experience an extreme and then allow myself to come back into homeostasis, knowing that I can sustain it. I can go out one day a week and drink a dozen beer and then be a complete wreck the next day as I come back into homeostasis. There's no avoiding the hangover. But if you're an adult, you can experience the full gamut of experience. Understanding how your nature works, that homeostasis is how every aspect of your nature and the universe is facilitating you being able to experience those moments by self-regulating to bring it back into homeostasis in a state of perpetual wealth generation, yielding a surplus, perpetually and infinitely growing and expanding from that surplus, not from a deficit. You never grow, you never become more incrementally from a deficit. It's always from a surplus. You can live your life like this. And, once you get into the mode of wealth generation as a human being, once you make your North Star not a number of dollars in your bank account, but once you have set a baseline within which homeostasis for you means compounding wealth, then that's when you're truly free. That's when you become a universe unto yourself. And all of the growth in your life, all of the expansion comes from the surplus. And you're constantly reinvesting that surplus into vigorously growing and expanding, but never at the risk of homeostasis, never at the risk of your life self-organizing and coming back into harmony when you choose to experience an extreme. And we can use these extremes to, if we notice that something is way out of balance, let's say two of our friends had their 40th birthday, one on the Friday night, one on the Saturday night, and we decided to go hard on the Friday and the Saturday. We can use the extremes of the other to come back into balance, much faster the next day by doubling up on our sleep, by doubling up on healthy food instead of crap food. By moving against the aspect of our nature that's trying to run away from the hangover, we allow ourselves to experience it rather than taking drugs to act as a buffer, rather than taking not recreational drugs, but, Disprin or aspirin to make it feel better. All those things are creating separation between the experience that the universe is seeking for us to have, to come back into homeostasis. Ternary thinking. It can change your life. It can really change your life. And once you come to a very deep understanding that even all of your thoughts, that some people would call negative thoughts or repeating negative thoughts or thoughts that you're trying to resist and run away from through meditation or distracting ourselves. When you use ternary thinking to start leaning into those negative thoughts and owning the truth of them, you come to realize that the part of your nature that's infinite is the part of you that you've been resisting all along. For example, many human beings resist the emotion or the thought of being insignificant. I'm insignificant. However, the aspect of your nature that's infinite, that is pre-manifested reality, pre-matter, pre-substance, it is insignificant because it is of no matter, you see. It doesn't matter. It's insignificant. The essence of infinity is that it has zero substance. Its superpower is weakness. It has zero strength. And so these parts of you that are weak and powerless and have no strength, it's just the infinite aspect of your nature that is non-binary, that you're in resistance to. You haven't come to know it within yourself. And that part of your nature is the part of you that experiences emotion, energy in motion. And it's non-binary. Whereas light is binary because it can be broken down into packets. But what is a packet of sound? What is a packet of energy? As a photon, it's a whole bunch of packets of energy bonded together. But a sound or energy has no beginning and end. It comes out of infinity and then it goes back in. It moves and then it stops moving. But that's a topic for another day. So really, I just wanted to share with you the concept of ternary and how you can use it to change your life, really. How you can use it to face all of your fears and turn those fears into absolute strengths, and in the process finding the parts of your nature that most people are so opposed to, which is where your true power is, the part of you that's infinite, the part of you that's indestructible. Your greatest strength is how weak you are. Your greatest strength is in how weak you are, because the weakest aspect of your nature is the most malleable, which means it's the most capable of instantaneous change. Think about a fluid that has zero viscosity. has zero gravity. Imagine the power of that kind of weakness utilized in technology. So paradox is real, and it comes from coming to realize that you are singular and you are binary. And reality is composed of unity and separation. And Ternary, the lens of Ternary, enables you to leverage the superpowers of both, to live a life that's truly full of meaning and begins to self-regulate and self-organize. And, you know, over time you gain to trust it, you learn to trust it, and you let go more and more, because you know that when you push reality in a specific way, you know it's going to push back in another way, and you'll be ready for it and you'll be expecting it. And you begin to work with it symbiotically. It's a fun way to live. Okay. That feels like the right place to finish. That's it for now for the nature of Ternary. Cheers for now.